We are live.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Let me
So,
just.
welcome to Alminni Live. So, my name is Oliver,
My name's Johann.
and we are going to talk about Alminni and a specific use case today. Yeah. It's called Blender. So, you probably heard of it, but we're going to talk about Blender and Alminni. But first, what is Alminni?
I would say that Alminni is a memory for your AIs.
So, shared memory.
Yes. So you could say shared memory. So the idea here is that whenever you get an AI to do something for you, you can tell it to store this information in Alminni, thereby allowing other people in your environment to be able to obtain the same information that you gave Alvin. So essentially sharing the information across a team, a community, whatever's fitting for that specific use case.
Cool. And so this is Alminni Live. So what are we going to talk about? What's the format here?
Yeah. So this currently is what we're trying at the moment, which is that we're trying to demonstrate various projects that use Alminni, and very often what we will do is use Alminni in conjunction with existing MCP servers, for example, as well as web projects, APIs, whatever it is. Whatever we can find and do ourselves will be what we'll be talking about in these types of live streams.
Cool. So the question is, before we go into the weeds with Blender, so maybe a bit about the Alminni architecture, or how do you work with Alminni?
Yes, so you can just open up Alminni yourself by going, let me just go, currently called Memory Mesh. We are currently in the process of rebranding it to Alminni.
Maybe you could log out and see, so people can see the landing page.
Yeah, I will open a private window instead.
Yep.
So
Not to,
let's.
not to think, mess things up.
No, don't really want to have
And
to log back in and use one password and stuff.
and it works with Memory Mesh, which is the legacy name, but Alminni works as well. So if you go to alminni.com, that's
And there we
exactly
go.
the same page.
Yeah.
And you can see the cute mascot up in the left-hand corner.
Isn't he adorable? Look at this. Look at this cute little thing.
So that's a nudie branch.
Not to be confused with anything else. It's an animal. Don't worry.
Or a sea slug.
Yeah.
Or what's it called? Polycera?
In the proper like Latin name.
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
Nice.
So, but there's also something called MCP.
Yes. Just to keep it simple, you can always like Google and go on YouTube and search MCP because there are a million videos explaining exactly how that works and what it is. But essentially, what an MCP server is a way for an AI to communicate with a program or a website or some type of external software. So, for example, you could have a Microsoft Word MCP, which would be that you communicate with your AI and it could then produce Word documents, writing in documents, reading them, pushing them, or whatever it is.
So one word that is associated with MCPs is tools. So MCPs enable AI to have some tools.
Yes. So it's essentially a toolbox, yeah, for your AIs. So that are not just stuck in their tiny environment where they only see specifically what your conversation is and that's it. Instead, you let it branch out and start looking in this toolbox to find different types of like connectors.
So MCP is still fairly new, so it's not supported everywhere yet.
No.
But we have been using it through Cursor extensively. So maybe you can tell us a bit about Cursor integration.
Yeah. So there are several different types of tools that you can use for communicating through MCP. And the one we tend to use is an IDE called Cursor. which again, you can easily Google what cursor is and stuff, but essentially it is usually what you use to program in. But because the AI has gotten so much better at this point with all the LLMs and MCP support, we kind of also see cursor as it's basically just a program where you have some files and then you have an AI next to it that can see the files and use these various tools that you install into cursor. So that you could say, talk to Blender, talk to Word documents, write documents into this project or this folder. But there are various other ones that you could also use. But in this case, we're using cursor.
So how is Alminni working together with cursor?
So, like we've been saying, the same word over and over, which is MCP, we have made an MCP server for Alminni as well. So if I go into my MCP settings, so essentially where I install the MCP servers.
So the toolboxes.
Yeah. I already have one right here called Memory Mesh. So this is one you can install yourself by going to the Alminni. Let me just close this browser here, and then you can go into Alminni, find whatever workspace you're currently interested in. So in this case, we're going to be playing with Blender. And then there's a button far up in the right corner, top right corner, called Connect MCP. Pressing that one will give you the instructions on how to install this into, for example, cursor.
What's the fastest way to do it?
The fastest way would be to use this one command setup where you copy this line, paste it into your terminal, command prompt, whatever it is, something that can execute some script, and then run it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some prerequisites with you have to have Node.js installed and stuff, but that's all in the documentation.
I can see there's something, your access token there in that line.
Yeah. What you will have to do to be able to initialize this is to go into your account. So in this case, it's mine here. I'll go to at the top right corner, you press your initials or your avatar if you have one. API tokens tab. And from there, you can press the create token button. And thereby naming it something like this is a Blender MCP test. You can select what specific projects you want to work with.
So which workspaces, yeah.
Yeah. And then the expiration date. And after that, you create your token, copy this API token right here.
I think you probably should delete it right away.
It's fine, we won't be using it. No, to be fair, we should delete it. And again, just to demonstrate, you can right click. Now you can left click these dots and press revoke token. And here's the really annoying thing, which we made sure to be very annoying. You have to write this out. You have to write out the name to be able to revoke it. There we go. And then you take that token and you paste it into, like you essentially replace. So if you go back to the Connect MCP view, you paste it or replace the your access token text with that token you just copied and paste. And then you use that inside your command prompt or terminal, whatever.
So what that does is that it installs the MCP server.
Yes.
For cursor. But it also creates a cursor rules file, doesn't it?
Yes. So if we go back to cursor, there is something that none of them really do the same way. So, for example, there is, what's it called? Cloud Desktop or Cloud Code. And there's the new one that Amazon just released called Cairo or Kiro.
Windsurf is there.
Yeah, Windsurf.
Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, Visual Studio Code has their .vs code. So essentially all of these different tools or applications have different ways of defining rules or rule sets for your program. And what these rules mean is that every time you talk to your AI, he remembers to go into those rules and like bring that context with him so that he always considers specific things so he doesn't start from scratch every single time. And in this case, it generates what we call a cursor rule because we're using cursor. And that is this file under cursor rules memory mesh MDC. And this file essentially gives him or gives the Alminni the instructions on how to behave, how to communicate with Alminni, and how to update, and when to update, depending on how you word and phrase things.
So in principle, you don't need to spend too much time looking into it, but it is there, and it is the instruction set for connecting, in this case, Cursor with Alminni.
Yeah, and again, you can always go into Connect MCP and press the workspace system prompt on the Alminni website, and it will essentially give you the memory mesh MDC file. So there are multiple ways of doing this, depending on what workspace or what type of software you're using.
Fantastic. So a lot of technicalities here in the beginning, but maybe we should just jump into the weeds into Blender. Can you tell us briefly what Blender is?
Yes. So I think, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if I just open the Blender software, you might be able to tell pretty quickly that this is a 3D modeling software where it is not an easy program to use. It's very complex, and if you're good at it, there are infinite things you can do with this program. And for simple developers like us, either we don't have time or the energy to also sit down and become absolute professionals at Blender as well, because it will take a lot of time. So what we found out is that there is something called a Blender MCP tool that you can install both into Blender as well as into whatever program you're using, for example, Cursor. And then you can use this MCP server or this tool to instruct Blender on what to do. So what it will do is that it will generate Python code that it sends to Blender and then tells Blender to do X, Y, Z.
And you tried this out?
I have tried it. I joined their Discord and went through their tutorial. So if we pop back to the browser, you can easily just Google Blender MCP, and it's the first one that pops up on GitHub. So I follow these instructions and then installed all the necessary plugins.
And you have always dreamt of being a proficient at Blender, so this was a godsend.
Yes. I wanted to see if I could get really nice things without a lot of effort on my end. But just starting out sending him these commands from the MCP server, I realized very quickly that it is not that easy with just simple instructions that you tell them to.
So what kind of instructions did you try?
Well, I tried to build a house, a cartoony house, where I even gave him an image telling him, make me this house. And the windows were microscopic, and there were a lot of things wrong with the house. I even saved them. So if I go back to this Cursor project, and hang on, let's see. Just go back to Blender, open recent. I think I opened it recently. Yeah, here we go. So this is my first attempt. And this took a while. This took like 6 hours to do.
So you were going back and forth through Cursor or through this chat, instructing Blender to build this house without actually using Blender. Yeah. But it took you 6 hours.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I could build this house no problem myself within 6 hours.
Yes, even with your limited Blender skills.
Yeah. And again, he even added nice materials as well if we switch to the material view or the render view. But as you can see, the windows are teeny tiny, and there are...
Did you try to increase the size, or was that difficult to...
The windows?
Get the bot to understand that?
Yes. He had a tendency to put the windows underneath the door, and then when I told him to scale it up, he put the window on the other side of the house for some reason, even though I didn't tell him to do that. And as you can see right here, for some reason he decided windows are brown and not white, and the frame is gray. And this roof, he didn't do that. I did that. I made sure to select the vertices and lift up the roof and stuff, because there's no way he could do this by himself. And the reason we did this was specifically to demonstrate could we make this or a house faster by training Alminni, or the workspace Blender AI in Alminni, to learn how to work with Blender using the Blender MCP.
So you started doing that. So
Yeah.
How did you approach that?
So what I did initially was that I told him I want a house, I want it to look like this and this, and then every time he made a mistake, we would sit there painstakingly telling him to adjust it until he got it right. Or I would have to open Blender myself and tell him to make it look like this. Like when I told you this, I expected it to look like that. And then he, tried to understand that best he could. And then follow up, what we did after that is that if we go back to Cursor, I would tell him to document this process, or essentially just tell him, okay, this is what I want.
Remember this in Alminni, or
yeah. So I would just tell him to remember this painstaking process we just did, so that we don't have to do it again. And that was just through, as now they just open Cursor and open the new chat and the AI chat. We made sure to go through multiple houses, trying it again and again, just to see if it was faster the second time. So when I told him to make the second house, and I made sure to go through the same type of rules, like this is what I want this house. So if we look at my second attempt in Blender, it already looks a lot better. It looks way more cartoony, almost like a Simpson house. And this took about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, just from on and off working on it while I did some other stuff. And you can already tell it's way better. And this is just from training Alminni by telling Alminni.
So how many hours did you spend training Alminni?
For this one or the previous one? Because this one for this one, I would say.
Or did you do it also with? Did you also use the previous one as a training?
Yeah, I used the first one as a training set as well, where I would train Alminni on what not to do. And the same with this house. And I immediately noticed that it was much quicker the second time around.
Cool. There is also some Blender documentation.
Yes. So, initially, when I made the very first house, I had nothing. There was nothing in Alminni whatsoever. And after, if we go back to the Blender AI workspace, after I essentially told him to go into the Blender documentation on how to use Python with Blender, I took their entire documentation on how to use Python, like all the different code, like scripts and stuff you have to do. Took all of that and then fed it into Alminni. And then I got a very, very long list of various, what we called fragments within Alminni, which is, you can essentially think of as snippets, the information itself, the instructions that he stores in Alminni. And as you can see here, I don't even understand most of this, but he has something called BPY types operator, and he would go in and extract the code to what needs to be done in order to perform certain tasks, examples of how to use it, and what type of return values you can expect depending on, so he can more easily react to, say, oh, it failed. And then he can check the documentation in Alminni and say, why did it fail? Oh, because this example says that this would return a failure if X, Y, Z. And we did this to their entire documentation. So there are so many different ones. GPU module, advanced GPU integration, for example. Then you can learn on how to use GPU drawing basics using Blender.
So you did this at the same time as you did the second house?
Yes, I filled the entire Alminni, like the documentation of Blender, into Alminni, and then I made the second house.
Okay.
As well as other simple instructions, such as, for example, how are you supposed to handle cartoony houses versus realistic houses, and realistic rendering or cartoony rendering, and then he considers what colors to use, what shapes to use and stuff, so that he has the artistic view as well. Because you can already see the second house looks way more cartoony than the first one did.
Cool. So it's a combination of taking the documentation and doing some specific instructions and and putting it all into Alminni.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you demonstrate it to us how it's done, or from Cursor? So how can you instruct Blender from Cursor using Alminni?
Yeah, we can try it. Let's try and make a completely new scene with just a cube in Blender, and then switch over to Cursor.
Which is connected to Alminni?
Yes. But before we can do that, we need to make sure to turn on the Blender MCP server, which you do by pressing N and then pressing the Blender MCP tab and press the connect MCP server. This essentially just means that now Cursor can talk to Blender.
Yep.
And then what should we tell him? Hey, can you please make me a cartoony house? Something like that.
Yep.
Let's see if he figures that out.
So if you did that originally, you wouldn't get a very sensible result.
No, I tried that the first time. I didn't even document that house, but it was like the windows were somewhere in space. And it was not a house. There were trees everywhere. Like I wanted a house, but he put trees everywhere and there were just balls floating in the air. But again, this is not not to diminish Blender MCP. This is just, it's what an AI is able to process, because it is just Python code produce Blender objects.
So what's happening now here, and what's Cursor doing?
Yes, so if we look through the chat, you can see that he actually makes a search to the memory, the Alminni. As you can see, we still need to rename some of these things, but he looks up the fragments in Alminni to see if there's anything related to creating a cartoony house. And as you can see in his thought process, he says, great, I found an instruction set for creating cartoony houses. So already there, he has some context on how to build a cartoony house. And from there, he's able to extract those specific fragments that he needs to be able to produce what it is we're asking. And now he ended up with saying, should I go ahead and create your cartoony house now? And he gave me some general information of what we want. So a blue roof, basic body structure of the house, and raised roof with a triangular orientated house, kind of like the second example we saw. So we'll just say, yes, go build me a house. And then just because I love to do this, we'll give him a little hammer. And then from here on out, he'll be using so many.
So he's trying to relate to you.
Yes, I love me some emojis, and I want to reflect that in my AIs.
So what's happening in Blender now then?
Yes, so currently he has because what Blender MCP can do, which is really cool, is that he can take a screenshot of the view in Blender, and then from there decide what needs to be done. And I can see now that using Blender code and looking on the right side of Blender, you can see in the scene collection that he's creating a house body. He created a roof slope 1 and 2. And he's trying to make a roof at the moment. He made the concrete base.
That's a creative
roof. Or ground, at least. That's a very nice roof. It's very modern. So he saw that he probably made a mistake and wants to adjust it. So if we go back to Cursor, we can see what he's currently doing. See?
So which model are we using here?
Currently, I'm using Claude 4 Sonnet. But you can always test this with various different AIs, because it very much is a testing process in seeing what AI follows these types of instructions the best. The one I use the most is Claude 4, so that's why it's still there. But again, you could try it with Gemini or ChatGPT as well. And the really nice thing about Cursor is that he's able to produce to-do lists, so that he has essentially given himself a to-do list, which is, let's see if I can press it. Yeah, he's currently at add front door to the house, and then add windows for more charm. It's cute.
But the key message is that, well, Blender is cool, Cursor is cool, and having Blender MCP and connected to Cursor is cool. But to really make it shine, you need some kind of memory.
Yeah.
And that's where Alminni comes in.
Exactly.
So that's like the shared memory.
Yeah.
So anyone can use the Blender AI workspace from Alminni to do this.
And that's kind of what we want with Alminni, which is that we discussed earlier today as well, which was that Alminni is essentially a tool to empower other tools. So, for example, if you have to make little sneak peek, but a little teaser, but if you make PowerPoint presentations, he always has to base this off nothing essentially, or just by Googling. Whereas if you had Alminni next to it, that was specialized in making PowerPoint presentations, even the theoretical parts as well. You could train that by storing all the information in Alminni, and then from there on you would make perfect PowerPoint presentations every time. And the same with Blender. By filling Alminni with how to use Blender, how to follow good practices, and examples and inspiration on what is a cartoony house, what is a dragon, how do you build a dragon. By filling him with this information, he is much better at having like a foundation so they can actually produce something.
So do we have a front door now?
Well, let's go look. He says he's done. So if we open the house, look at that beauty. All right, let's see if he colored it. He did try to color it. Okay, hang on. So if we pop back here and tell him, this looks terrible. Can you please fix? Again, what might have helped as well would be just to tell him the exact things we want, like what door we want, what window we want. Can you please redo it, but use redo it. I want a red door, a concrete base, a yellow house, a window with black frames, and a raised triangular roof, and finally some bushes, just so that it roughly looks the same as what we've done before for some contrast. So let's see. And again, the thing is that once we've done with this entire process, we can tell him to store this information in Alminni so that he can remember what he did wrong and what he did well afterwards.
And there's a new to-do list there?
Yes. So the first one is to clear the current scene because that looks terrible.
It's gone.
And it's gone. And while he's doing that, we can pop on over to the browser and quickly have a look at, for example, if I'm in the Blender AI workspace, you can press the Create Fragment button, which allows you to, there's a little preview for new features, but you can create the fragments yourself by writing them out and then generating like summaries and tags and stuff. But what we actually want you to do is to use the AI tools ideally, because that way it basically becomes more of a conversation with the AI, and he will just automatically document everything you're saying rather than, oh, let me go over to this documentation and write it down, which no one really wants to do.
So the question is there any new fragment being created from this?
At the moment, he is not creating anything. He is just currently calling the Blender MCP to create this house. But I think after he's done, we can try and tell him to update it.
Yeah.
Or create some fragments. So he is still going. And again, this is just the first draft of this, test or test case that we're trying to run. Yeah. As this workspace gets even more information, more training data, more examples, and even better if more people could use it, because currently it's just me playing with it. And if other people could join in, we could train it even more, and then eventually it'll create houses perfectly, or characters or dragons or whatever it is perfectly every time, or at least almost every time. So, oh, look at that. He's already added some nice bushes.
Looking better. It's just a roof.
For some reason, he really struggles with the idea of a roof not facing into space.
Can you give a simple instruction to fix that roof?
Yeah, so what you can see right at the moment, just looking at Cursor, he says he's actually looking at the viewport and saying if it's good enough or not.
So I can see, now I'm looking into the Blender AI workspace in Alminni, that we have a fragment which says correct raised roof creation for cartoony houses. Maybe you can refer to that.
Yeah, we can try and see if we can get that through. So this is the final house at the moment, which, the roof is kind of on its way out. We can tell him that looks much better, but I see that the roof is upside down. Can you please fix this? And then we'll see if he will be able to find the relevant fragments.
Yep. I think we'll still call it memory fragments, even though we're changing the name to Alminni.
Yeah, because it is memory, I suppose. So, yeah. So let's see.
Calling MCP tool. So which tool did he call?
He has currently called just the Blender directly, so we'll have to instruct him. Please check memory mesh to see if there are any instructions on how to orientate a.
So really, this also depends on the instruction set or the cursor rules.
Yeah.
You can instruct the agent there to always check Alminni first.
Yeah. And sometimes he gets a bit confused because this AI is a black box, so you have to kind of really make sure that he always uses it.
So called search memory fragments. Excellent. I found the exact instructions to need. Surprise, surprise.
He's always so positive. Found the exact one. Excellent. So now he's just he fetched the fragment and now he's trying to understand what to do.
180-degree flip. Sounds right.
Sure happens. Yeah, so you can see, I have mentioned this a couple of times. He already pointed out that he found several, meaning that this is a frequent issue. So this is something you should prioritize. So let's see if he's actually flipped it.
Whoa!
He actually
amazing
improved it.
Fantastic. I think we have more or less proved our point. But the main question then is, okay, what's next in this project, the Blender AI project?
Yes. So essentially all we really need to do at this point is just to give him more information so that he is better at understanding instructions, because the challenge, of course, is to take human language, convert that to Python code to be able to push it into Blender, and then somehow Blender needs to understand exactly converting that information. So
might we find some other sources than the documentation? I'm thinking maybe Stack Overflow or YouTube videos or some other sources that could help in becoming a better Blender agent.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that by feeding him, if people know of open source 3D modeling solutions that they've made before, tools for Blender, and they're open source, they're welcome to add this to the knowledge base, so that we are basically feeding it as much examples as well as we are feeding it how to do things. So he has lots of inspiration to work with.
Okay, then again, this Blender AI workspace, it's public?
Yes. If you go on to the browser, you can pop right into GitHub and find the Blender MCP.
Yeah, but I'm thinking on Alminni. So if you sign up for Alminni.
Oh, yes, in Alminni. If you go to alminni.com, then we wait for a second. Here we go. Oh wait, let me just use this one.
Can you sign in?
You go to workspaces. So what you can do is that you can subscribe to this Blender AI.
And it's a public one, so you can find it by clicking there.
So if you press the Discover Public button, you can search for Blender. I will not find it because I'm already part of it. But you will be able to find Blender AI, subscribe, and from there on out, you can start using it.
Yeah.
Either for free, because we are using the freemium model. And then if you get really hardcore, then you can obviously switch to a paid version.
Fantastic. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think we covered most of it. And again, we might be coming back to this Blender MCP at a later date where we will really show off how badass he's gotten at that point.
Fantastic. And if you have any experience with this, with using Alminni with Blender, please, you can reach out to us and comment here, or you can, reach out to us directly. And maybe if you have any suggestions for improvements.
Yeah, we will make sure to drop the Discord server that we have on the YouTube description to make sure that you can also join in there, and then we can start having conversations. And also join the Blender MCP server on Discord so that you can also, I'm on there so we can talk about what works and what doesn't work.
Fantastic. I'm Ólavur.
I'm Jóhann.
See you next time.